Right.
You need it anytime, actually, when you're online.
Hello. Welcome to Property Gamechangers Live. You are going to love, I say this every week, but you really will this evening love our conversation and our guest. As you know, in Property Gamechangers, we are celebrating the power of ethical property investing to really change lives. And we're also debunking the myth that you need a lot of money to get started. Anyone can get started. And of course, we're inspiring each other to believe bigger, to be bolder, and to be game changers. And my guest this evening is super talented. She's published 5 books. She was named by the Telegraph one of the top 25 most influential people in property, and she speaks at events all around the world. So I'm really thrilled that she's joined us here this evening, and she'll be talking about getting started in property investing in 2008 and how she did that with her family. She'll be talking about investing in the peak of the last recession, buying 1 to 2 properties each month. And she also mentors people in how to get started. But how I originally found Vicki, what in my mind feels like a lifetime ago, when she was in a double spread in a national newspaper, and they had some sort of headline such as "single mum." Struggling single mum to multi-millionaire property investor. It was something along those lines. And that was the first time where I thought, oh my gosh, when I read the story, I thought, oh, this sort of sounds like an ordinary person who's done all this. And I was absolutely blown away. But it was many years after that I was to ever, get started in property. So it's a huge privilege for me to welcome you, Vicki Wusche, to Property Gamechangers Live.
Hi, Stephanie. Wow, with an intro like that. Thank you very much. Lovely to be able to speak to you. So this is great, isn't it?
Brilliant.
All starts in strange ways, doesn't it? With a newspaper article, the power of the press.
Yes, and that's one of the things that you've done so well. Is it is always tempting to hide, especially when you're first getting into it.
I think it's actually it's very dangerous territory to wander into. I mean, the story behind that article was really interesting. Came round, they said they wanted to interview me. We got chatting, the journalist and I ended up having a conversation with him about how universal credit had been set up all wrong, that instead of empowering people, it was set up to highlight the lack of education that they've got about financial education, maths, money management, and that people were doomed to be worse off on universal credit. He loved it. He was off. He wrote the piece. He phoned the government for a response, and then phoned it in to the Daily Mail, who the piece was in, and the Daily Mail went, no, we've got a space for, and the article title was something like "Benefit Mum to Property Millionaire." And that's all they wanted, was benefit mum to property millionaire. And then, not that I read, the testimonials or the comments or whatever, but you do sort of go back to it and have a look later on. And it was like people going, oh, wow, her story's amazing. I thought she was an incredible woman until I understood that she was buying property and charging people rent to live in the properties. And it was like, what did you think that I was doing? That I was taking on considerable amounts of debt. And I think this is an important lesson here. When you invest in property, you are taking on considerable amounts of debt in the hope, which you will mitigate for, that your tenant pays the rent and that you make a profit at the other end, because you need to make a surplus at the other end to cover rents and repairs, to pay for your time for managing it, because that's how you earn your wages. And the naivety of the comments on the bottom of this article. So it's proved brilliant and raises your profile, but just beware that what you say is not necessarily what they will print. Be warned.
Yes, we've heard that before. So what I want to start off with, Vicki, is that for many people, getting into property a bit more seriously on a full-time sort of basis, like you are doing and have been doing for a long time, often comes because of a decision. And that decision point is sometimes brought on by something's happened, and there's that moment when you just think, right, that's it, and this is the way I'm going to go. Was there a moment like that for you? And if so, what was it?
Yeah, exactly like that. I'm obviously so ordinary and run of the mill. I was made redundant in 2006 from a job I loved, and I remember wandering in the wilderness of the next year going, how is this possible? You know, I love my job. I thought I did my job well. And now my employer has not only said, you're no longer needed, off you go, you're redundant, but actually stopped and suspended all of my income. How was I going to provide for my family? So I decided at that moment that I was never going to allow anybody to be in charge of my finances again. It doesn't mean to say that I wouldn't have maybe got a job, but I was very definitely going to create some alternative form of income. And that's so relevant. Here we are, 14 years later. And that is so relevant to everybody now. If you had an alternative stream of income through this period of lockdown, then whether you were furloughed at 80% or lost your job, you wouldn't have been as stressed as if you didn't have that alternative stream. And so then I started doing some personal development first, and then got the obligatory email, which I think so many people have done, whoever it's from, the email that offers you a free 2-hour, event in the days that we were allowed to do events, a free 2-hour event. And from that, the hard sell into what then cost me 20 grand, and equally cost my sister and my brother-in-law 20 grand. Which I think they've almost forgiven me for. So 40 grand later, practically a whole house, certainly enough deposit for at least 2, if not 3 properties. There we were on a course of many modules. Yeah. Yes, same way.
But that worked out quite well for you. So tell us a bit about, you went on this course, and then what happened next?
Well, it was even before I went on the course. So the system was free 2 hours, sold you into a 3-day weekend, 3-day weekend, sold you into the big event. And I was hook, line and sinker on the 3-day. I took some 2 inches of notes. My notes were this big, and they said, and I remember it very clearly, that you have to put in 100 offers before you get an offer accepted. And I was so gullible back then. I just, when the people at the front of the room said something, I absolutely believed it as a sentence, not even as a metaphor, So I thought, well, I've got to put 100 offers out there before anybody starts saying yes. And offer number 25 and offer number 26, or offer number 26 and offer number 27 got accepted. And I remember going, oh no, I haven't even actually started the course. And you silly people, don't you know that you got to wait for me to do another 75 offers? That's what the guy at the front of the room said. You've jumped the gun. I'm not ready for you yet. And we followed through. And that first property, number 24, number 25, was the first one that we completed on. Yeah, and I wasn't ready.
Wow, we're never ready though, are we? But let's talk about the finances, because that's something that holds people back. So there you were, according to the Daily Mail anyway, single mum, maybe not on benefits by this time, but you talk to us about, how did you get the funds together to buy this first property and obviously to go on the course?
So I don't think, I'm casting my mind back a long time now, but I don't think that we actually knew that we were going to invest at the point where we went to the 2-hour thing. And I went with Bob, my partner, my sister and my brother-in-law, and we went to the 2-hour thing, and maybe it was just me and Bob, but then all 4 of us definitely went to the 3-day weekend. And we went to the 3-day weekend out of curiosity, and somewhere in the process of the 3 days, I was in. That's what I was going to do. I was going to invest in property. I had thought that it was a good idea, and now I'd done some training. It's as if someone had shone a spotlight on a whole pile of words that explained a world that I had been aware of in my periphery, but didn't have the language to ask about. So, they say, ask questions. But if you don't have the language to ask the question, it's very difficult. And also, even if you don't understand that it is a thing that you could ask questions about, then it's not like you could even use the wrong language, but still ask the questions. So now all of a sudden, this 3 days, I'm getting the language, and with that started asking the questions, and by the end of it knew that we were going to invest, and just spoke to us all. We sat down, and we would have our evening meals together and our lunches together, and we were plotting and planning and talking and everything else, and just said, if we all put some money in, we could go investing. And they went, yeah, all right. And we looked at how much we could all raise, and we each raised 20 grand each. So Bob and I as a couple put in 40, my sister put in 20, brother-in-law put in 20, because they're not a brother-in-law that are married. They are, one is my sister and one is Bob's brother-in-law. So it goes that way around. And we put in 80 grand together. And then we sat round very formally with a flip chart in the kitchen round the table, going, what is our strategy? What are your goals? What are your goals? What are your goals? What are your goals? And we wrote them all down. We agreed our goals, agreed the common goals that we were going for. Then we started thinking about areas, and that was it. And then we were off, and we went as a little foursome in the car, headed north, as people will know that I do the bulk of my investing in Liverpool. And that was it. We went up there after first going, where would you like to invest? And my sister went, Brighton. And we all went, oh, Brighton, that's fabulous. Oh, no, that would be too expensive. And then Bob and I said, Bath. And we both went, oh, that's lovely, but no, that would be too expensive. And, we worked our way around the country saying places we'd been to that were lovely, but way too expensive. And then I went, oh, I've just recently come back from an educational event in Liverpool, and nobody went, oh, when I said Liverpool.
Yeah.
So then we Googled prices, and we thought, yeah, it could probably work up there, and off we went.
That is brilliant. And we've got a couple of people saying hi. So there's Vicky, there's Tracy from Glade Property saying hello.
Oh, hey, Tracy.
And we've got James as well. Oops.
No, that isn't the answer, James. But
No.
obviously the same pattern.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, so you've got this property. You're based in London.
Yeah.
And you're investing in Liverpool. That doesn't always end well, but obviously you're here many years later. So tell us about what happened in your first foray into.
Well, I think that the two things I would say there is, wherever you live, I know what people say is invest close to home. But actually, I think for me, it's about invest close to somewhere really well. Invest somewhere really well. So even if it isn't close to home, you then have to get to know that place as well as if it was your home, which we did in Liverpool. So we understood that the people had different tastes. We want carpets, they want laminate floors. We like curtains, they like blinds. Understanding the local nuances to the property and therefore what the product should look like at the other end. Don't make it so far that you can't get there in emergency. I'd like to say that it's 3 hours. It probably should be 3.5 hours, and you can get there in half a day, but you have a localized team that you can manage. And I think that if we had, and I remember us looking around at the time, I lived in Uxbridge, which is near Heathrow Airport. We looked around at properties there, and I remember very clearly there was a 2-bed flat on the market for something like 140,000. It needed a ton of work doing to it. It would have taken all our 80,000 in terms of deposit and solicitor fees, survey, etc., and the refurb budget in order to bring this place up. New kitchen, new bathroom. The bathroom walls had to be knocked around and everything like that. And we would have got a fair return on that, but that would have been it. There would have been no mileage to be able to pull enough money back out again to go again. And I'm not fond of that strategy of remortgage, release, go again, because you're constantly reducing your cash flow, and cash flow is king. So yeah, we ended up in Liverpool. And I think the key thing there was finding a local letting agent who could translate the needs of the client into the refurbishment strategy that we needed to follow, and making sure that the product that we created was fit for purpose. It's not about our taste. It's about the needs or wants of the client that's going to come into your property, whatever strategy you're following.
Yeah, totally agree with that, Vicky. So you set off. Tell us a little bit about your strategy then, because you said you're not a fan of the buy, refurb, refinance because you like to recycle your money faster and achieve a higher cash flow. So, what sort of strategy were you employing up in Liverpool?
So straightforward buy to let. So we invested our 80,000. The second thing we did, and this is all that I talk about, I don't know which way to lean, this way. One of my books is called Using Other People's Money. And in that I talk about all the strategies in those early days that I tried, why they worked, why they didn't work, what the pros and cons were in terms of the time needed to make the strategy work and the money needed to make the strategy work. So we did straightforward buy to lets because I feel that they're the foundation to any portfolio. We looked at HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy in Liverpool, and without being rude, because of the benefit system and because of the nature of northern towns, it's very easy to get yourself a house. So if you are a lone female, probably a lone male, or a couple, and you have got children, then you can get enough housing benefit to allow yourself to get a 2 or a 3 bed house, depending on how many children you've got. So no one would live in shared accommodation unless they couldn't form a relationship with someone else. Because if you could form a relationship with someone else, you'd have children and you'd be able to get a house. And therefore, HMOs, other than pure students, so in Liverpool, of course, there's the universities, and that was a very, very tied up market. There was a big investor there that played the whole cookie cutter game, and you could see the pictures of the student houses, and you knew that it was the same furniture, you knew that it was the same color paint on the wall, and the chances of us breaking into that and getting to be a preferred supplier by the university was unlikely. So we didn't go that route. And then regular people that would live in a house of multiple occupancy would be people who had got issues. So they would have drug issues, alcohol issues, mental health issues. Now that's a very niche market, and it can work really well for you if you work in partnership with some charity or council scheme where you are being part of housing people with needs that then come with support workers. And I would never have taken that on if there weren't support workers involved at all.
Yeah. I think the points you made there are very, very good. And this is where, I know of a number of people, or I've heard stories of people who've been burnt by going to Liverpool and other places similar, where the house share market is just different. Obviously in London, there's a very vibrant house share market because accommodation is so expensive. So there are lots of people who actually like the social element of sharing and want to share. But yeah.
It's also about aspiration without being rude. The people who in London are in house share, they are professional young people. And we flip that word around, professional. They're working young people who are on a career path, whatever that is. And that could actually still be in retail and working their way up through the retail business, or it could be, that they're in some other classical profession, whether it's nursing, accounting, law, or whatever. But they are people who are pursuing careers. They're single at the moment. Then they'll move into a relationship. Usually at that point, when the relationship becomes serious, they'll go, the next one comes in. So you have a reasonable turnover rate in the properties. And that's a whole different kettle of fish. We've looked at and worked with HMOs in Reading, in Berkshire, and in Lincoln. So I've done those for my clients. In Reading, in Berkshire, the market is different. They are maybe lower paid. They're more trades than professional. They're less about aspirational, as in they're a young person who's then going to meet someone. And then as that relationship forms serious, they're then going to move off and get their own flat. And they're more often single working males. They could even be older males whose relationships are broken up. So sometimes you can get an older house full of like divorced men, or you can get a working house full of your plasterers and your carpenters and things like that. And out in Lincoln, we worked the whole student market. And that was fine until a couple of really, really or not they weren't really big. They were a couple of brothers who got a considerable amount of money, just came in and altered the market completely. Properties we were paying 80 to 90,000 for, making 4-bed houses, often with en suites in, and getting £120 a room, suddenly were on the market for 120 and getting £90 a room, and the numbers dramatically change, and then you need to move on. So you can have your base wherever it is, and then when the market changes there for a while, or you saturate your particular strategy, you can then go look from that firm place of cash flow, look for somewhere else to invest in, find somewhere else, maybe following the same investment technique, maybe picking a different investment technique. And then when that market changes, you come back and you just work maybe between 1, 2, or 3 geographical areas, and don't make it so hard that you can't achieve this in a drive round. So I would leave home, spend half a day or so driving up to Liverpool. So I'd leave at 7 in the morning, get there for 10, park up behind McDonald's, have a sleep in the car just to refresh myself, start work from sort of 11 o'clock, stay overnight in the hotel, work the next day, and then the next late afternoon, early evening, drive across the Transpennines to Lincoln, and then stay in Lincoln the night, work the next day, and then drive back from Lincoln that next evening. So I was away from home for 2 nights and sort of like a 3-day, and it was a triangle, and I always just did it that way round, and it worked.
It sounds exhausting, but you've got people managing the property, so you're just up there every now and again for viewing.
Well, what I missed out, sorry. So your full question was, what was our strategy and how did we go again when we weren't doing remortgaging? So yes, the detail of it was our own portfolio was predominantly buy to let, and this is why we didn't do HMOs. But then to go again, although I'll cut out a piece of the story, to go again, then what I worked out is I have a model that works, and I've got a team, and I've put a lot of effort into that. And I like the idea of, these are resources. How can I leverage the resources I've got? So on the one hand, you're always leveraging your money. So I've got some money to invest. How can I get a better rate of return on that? So you invest in property. But the next stage of that is, I've got all of this knowledge. I know my area. I know my team. How can I leverage that? Sourcing. It's what I was doing already. So effectively, I had spent 2 years sourcing properties for us as a family group. And now I was going to do exactly the same thing for friends or strangers who wanted me to invest for them. And basically round about 2010, when I wrote the first version of Using Other People's Money, which I think is about £1,000 on Amazon now, probably because some strange person in America has got the one copy. But when I first wrote that book and that got me speaking gigs, then people started coming to me and saying things like, oh, it's all right for you. Or they were saying things like, could you do that for me? So, oh, it's all right for you. Off you go. You don't know me. Read the book. You'll find the truth. Don't use me as your excuse for not doing anything. And the people who said, can you help me? It was yes, of course. And that started the sourcing business. Well, then gradually, I mean, I started out for the family charging £2,000 a sourcing fee, then worked up to £3,000, £5,000, and I now charge £10,000 sourcing fees. Well, source 5 properties and you've got enough to put one in the bag for yourself, or you've created a year's wages for yourself. So all of a sudden, property isn't just an investment, it's actually a business. And so that's how the second book came about, which is Make More Money from Property, from investor thinking to a business mindset, because actually all of your listeners, all of the people who are watching this, whatever you're doing, and we can have this as an individual argument if you want, you are sourcing property. You might be sourcing property to trade. You might be sourcing property to refurb, to keep as buy-to-lets, to do as HMOs. You might even be sourcing properties to rent, or to lease option or anything else. But sourcing is the process of finding a good deal. If you are doing that and you systemize that, then there's no reason why that then can't be a business that you could package and offer to somebody else for a fee. And that fee then either becomes more income for you, so it's a job where you trade your time for money, or you do it and it's a way that you take that money, and then that's the way that you can go again, and you can go again, and you can go again. And the other key thing about sourcing is, if your money runs out and you can only buy, say, 2 houses, and then you have to wait 2 years till you save the money up, you're losing momentum in an area. You know, your ability to keep on top of the house prices, to keep visiting, probably wanes after about the first 12 months. And then when you have got the money, you've got to start it all over again. Well, if you're there sourcing all the time, either for yourself or for other people, then you're in a position where your fingers on the pulse, you know the prices, you know the area, you've got your team, you've got your letting agent, and they see you as bringing more clients to them. So they'll not only manage your property, they'll manage all of your client properties. You can refer people to your own solicitor. You can refer people to your own broker. I don't take a cut from any of that, but I know that my broker loves me. You know,
Yeah.
we always get these lovely emails backwards and forwards because I refer so many clients to them.
And so a lot of people think about getting into sourcing, some good, some bad. But did you say you wrote a book about setting up a sourcing business, or am I?
Yeah, no. So the
show us?
second.
Can you show us? Is that
Yeah.
one of the ones behind you?
Yep. So this is the second book, and it's out in a new edition now. So this is Make More Money from Property. There we go. From investor thinking to a business mindset. And this is really the concept of taking what you do and making it a business. So the very first book, which is this one, Using Other People's Money, this is about the different investment techniques.
Great.
Okay, so this gives you the language. Remember how I said right at the beginning, I didn't even have the language to ask the questions. So this gives you the language. It also now in its 4th edition actually analyzes the investment techniques. And I think buy to let is an investment technique. It's not a strategy. Your strategy is, I want to invest my money or invest my time into property because I want to do this. And then you deploy investment techniques. Your strategy will stay the same, but your investment techniques may change. So this talks about the investment techniques, and then the second book is about how to businessify it.
Great. So you've got your business. So let's just say you've got your 80 grand up there, and that would have been several deposits of the type of properties that you were buying. So you've got those 3 or 4 properties to start off with. So your money's all tied up at that point, and you've got your cash flow coming in. Yep. You've got your rents coming in. And then what you're saying is you became liquid again much more quickly by having your property business, sourcing properties for other people. And that kept the money coming in so that you were building up those deposits more quickly to be able to
go again.
And let's talk about the loan to value.
So 1 second there, just to say, and this probably might be jumping ahead of your question, is by generating more money with this hand, I wasn't having to remortgage the properties on this side.
Yes.
You know, and then that way your asset and your portfolio, and maybe if I guess your question, is not an increasing loan to value. So many people will start out, and well, now because you can maybe get 80% again, they'll do that, but you get a 75% loan to value, you add value, you remortgage because that's the way you think you're going to pull your money back out. I have to say, for a lot of people, that doesn't work anyway. You have to be very good at the maths to know that you can pull that off. And a lot of people say they do it and they don't do it, or they don't count all the figures. So be very cautious about that. But if you do pull some of that money out, then all you've done is made sure that you have heightened the debt that is on the asset, not necessarily increase the loan to value, because it might still be 75% loan to value. But now, instead of borrowing 75,000, you're borrowing 100,000. You've increased your debt. You've obviously, if you've increased your debt, reduced your cash flow, and you've weakened the whole thing. So if you had 4 properties and they provide the 4 corners of your portfolio, and you remortgaged yours and I didn't remortgage mine would be a more solid platform to go on and buy my 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th house. Yours would be a very vulnerable platform. So as soon as interest rates go up, or as soon as you come out of your tied in period, if the market isn't performing, you wouldn't be able to remortgage, you'd roll on standard variables, all sorts of things can go wrong when you over leverage. And through this period of lockdown, all I've been doing is speaking to people who've come to me for strategy sessions because they are over leveraged in some way. They have, dare I say, got greedy, got forgotten to mitigate risk, and they've either taken on too much. Well, yeah, all of it is about too much debt. So they've either over leveraged or they've combined strategies that have caused them to owe too many people too much money.
Okay, so just really interested in that. And can I ask, did you focus on the buy-to-let mortgages or the repayment mortgages? Just from what you're saying, which did you tend to go for?
I went for interest only because, well, and again, I was very naive, bearing in mind that a lot of this purchase was, 2008, 9, 10. And on the training course, they told us that properties would double in value every 7 to 10 years. So I thought, well, mathematically, that makes sense. Even if they don't double, I mean, I wasn't so stupid to think that they were going to double in Liverpool, but even if they increased by 50%, we'd be able to then, sell some, keep some, or pay down some, or whatever we wanted to do. And so we went interest only, and interest only then puts you in a position where you've got maximum cash flow. And I think if you were to ask me the question, what would I do if I knew now and could go again, or all the way back there, take all my knowledge now and go all the way back, I'd do exactly the same thing in terms of buy to lets, but I would maybe make the first 4 interest only, and then I would look at doing maybe 2 or 3 as capital and repayment. Then I might come back to some interest only. Then I might come back to some capital and repayment, just so that I'd got a spread of properties where some were automatically paying down the debt just by nature of the tenant paying, and some that I was going to then look to refinance at some point in the future.
Totally agree. Very I'd say unusual perspective. I think when we come into it, I think it all depends where you are as well. We're older, in our 40s. So when we started buying
that's a whole nother podcast, Stephanie. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that's young. It's all relative. But the point I was going to make is, so we've got some of our borrowing is interest only, but the majority actually is capital repayment, and that's partly to do with where we are in the country. In Newport in South Wales, it's not a high capital appreciation area, and it's partly to do, I think, with age and level of risk, and these deals still cash flow well as capital repayment, but it's mixing it up so that you have got the funds to invest, but also you're de-risking the portfolio from as well as at the same time.
I think that's so important. It's about protecting the portfolio. There is no point, and so many times I meet people and they're hung up on, I need 10 properties, I need 100 properties, or you speak to someone and they've got so many rooms, and it's almost like you are grandstanding with your numbers. None of that interests me. All I want to know is, how much money do you make? Because you can have 100 properties and be making less than £100 per property and actually be in an extremely vulnerable position. The slightest thing could change, whether it was interest rates or, a global pandemic, never mind a recession, and you could lose the lot. So your 100 properties doesn't excite me in the slightest. So it's very interesting to actually look at, as you say, that de-risking strategy. And I don't think that should be just a female thing. I think that's something that if you are going to be a professional investor, part of professional investing is to understand risk and to de-risk where possible.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the balance, isn't there, between putting your money to best use, which is what the people who are taking the money out to invest somewhere else where they feel it can be better used, and also what we talked about, managing the risk. But I do want to ask you a question, because you've been investing in Liverpool since 2008.
Yep.
So I don't know if you can recall what those purchase prices now and what those properties are worth now. What's happened to the values really in Liverpool in the last 12 years?
Well, we were doing reasonably well coming up to the end of 2019. We were just starting to see a change in the market. And it's interesting because all over Liverpool, you can't say that it's not the same. It's postcode by postcode. So some postcodes, the property prices won't have changed. Some postcodes, the property prices will have gone down. Some postcodes, the property prices would have gone up. But across the entire portfolio, we saw the properties drop dramatically, because if you think of 2008, I started investing at the start of a recession. And that's what's really important for everybody who's listening now. You are, whether you're starting out or whether you're an experienced investor and you're going to invest again, you are now investing in the beginning of a recession. And actually, I don't think the word recession really is descriptive enough to describe the future. If that's a sentence. You know, we have no idea what this future is. If we say the word recession, that implies that there's going to be a global slowdown and property prices will drop. And I don't think it's as linear as that word recession says. There isn't a to B. It's just much, much more complicated than that. And so I think the question here is, I haven't got a word to describe the future because we don't know it. So we haven't invented that word. But recession will form part of it. Property prices will form part of it. And whatever you do now, you need to be aware of your investment technique not relying on property prices increasing, because there'll be certain areas and certain times over the next 5 years that will peak up, and then there will be other periods and other times where they'll drop down, and you need to be aware of that. I know this is live, Stephanie, but one of the issues of our new working from home is animals, and my cat has decided it needs to go out. Can I have 2 seconds to just open the doors?
Yeah, of course. We can't. And I'll just say hello to, I can see James is saying he's got 3 properties in Birmingham. Raphael is saying hi, Vicki, as well.
Hey, Raph.
And we've got Kurtan on as well, and a few others. So, Vicki, what I'd like to do is talk to you about what's your strategy at the moment. Are you buying now? What do you think it's going to be, a U recession or a V, or what's your strategy at the moment?
Yeah, I don't care what letter of the alphabet the recession is. I know that at the moment there's a lot of demand. So I think what's really interesting is if you think through what's going on in the market. So COVID and the lockdown happened, doors shut, and there was a whole load of people that were in the process of buying. So they'd, either made the decision to buy, had put an offer in, had got an offer accepted, maybe had mortgage and survey done, were waiting for exchange. I think a lot of people maybe who had exchanged would have tried to complete as quickly as they could. There might have been a few that just had to finish that off because they couldn't move. But those people need to follow through the market. So we're going to get a whole load of people that are going to finish their sales. Then there's going to be the people that were just coming down the line behind them who'd made the decision for whatever reason that they were going to move and weren't in a position where they can be completing now. So they're out in the market looking to go. There's also then going to be a batch of people who, through the lockdown, either because work circumstances have changed or relationship circumstances have changed, or potentially even family in general circumstances have changed, now need to or want to move. So they will be out in the market. And we're going to see the market being fairly buoyant at the moment, both in terms of lettings and sales, with things coming on, things going relatively quickly. There's a lot of hunger in the market. I don't believe that it's going to be sustained, because what's going to happen is, as they come through with those that need to finish what they're doing, those that need to move, then we're going to come down to the ordinary general public. What are the ordinary general public going to be doing? Worrying about whether they can go out or not, worrying about whether there's going to be a second spike. Then before we know it, it's going to be September and we're worrying about the kids going back to school. They're going to be distracted. Then before we know it, it may be a peak. It may not be a peak. We could be into the flu season. Then it's going to be Christmas. I think we're going to start to see the market slow. And as it slows, depending on what happens next, it could very easily start to spiral down. The second thing that's going to happen, which is, instead of thinking about whether things are going to be U's or V's, furloughing ends as it is at the moment round about October. If you watch the ticker tape at the bottom of the news channels, which is pretty much all I watch, how many hundreds, how many thousands of people are being let go from so many industries, not just, as we're speaking about at the moment, fixated on travel or the theatres and shows and restaurants, but all sorts of businesses. What was it I noticed the other day? Cafe Rouge, Bella Italia, we've got Airbus, all sorts of people are letting their staff go. And we're not even hearing about the small businesses. I was working with one client, they had 21 staff, they let 5 of them go. So as a successful small business, they still let 25% of their staff go. As people start to lose their jobs, they're going to find it difficult to pay their mortgages. It's easier with the rent. So don't worry about your tenants, because as they lose their jobs, they will be able to move from one rented accommodation to more affordable if they can't afford yours. But people with mortgages are going to be in a position where they're going to struggle to pay. We've then also got an awful lot of people that took this very stupidly named mortgage holiday, which was just a ridiculous name for it. There was no such thing as a holiday. That will have to be paid back. If that all lands at the same time, starting to make your repayments for your so-called mortgage holiday on top of losing your job or being let go or the end of furlough or whatever else, I don't think we're going to see repossessions, because that will be politically unpalatable. But there will be people who are going to have to sell, and as soon as that starts to come in the market, we're going to have residential buyers who are hesitant about making a move because they're not going to know whether they're going to keep their jobs, and then we're going to have residential people who've lost their jobs or have to move, providing more supply into the market, and then we're going to have supply and a demand mismatch. And that's the point at which, when there are more properties in the market, it then becomes a buyer's choice. The offers become tighter and tighter and tighter. And as they do, that starts to push the prices down. And it's a very easy slope to go down. And we don't know what's happening in the future. So I don't know what will be there to put the brakes on it.
So from what you're saying, it sounds like what you're saying, it's a great time to buy if you're
It's
an
very
investor.
definitely. Yes. But what I would say to you is, and we were mentioning about this just before the show, you need to now be investing like a professional amateur. And what I mean by that is, I don't care what position you're in, whether you're experienced and got loads of properties or not experienced and just starting out. It's the same thing. You need to be very professional. You need to be very businesslike. You need to be very clued up on the maths and the numbers and looking at your risk. And everything's new. So even you and I, experienced investors, it's all new now. We don't know what's coming. And therefore, we really need to have our thinking hats on. Don't think that you can do what you always did and get what you always got, because you won't. And you've got to be aware of the fact that property prices could go down, and mitigate for that. You've got to be aware of the fact of, who's going to be the favorite type of tenant going forward. I have always bought buy-to-lets, and I have predominantly rented to tenants, benefit tenants. I've mitigated that with guarantors. I had, I think, probably in the whole portfolio, 2 or 3 tenants that were employed, units, houses that had employed people in it. And they got furloughed. One lost their job and one got furloughed. And because the furlough scheme kicked in, they then paid us back. So, really interesting. The bulk of the portfolio was benefit people who get paid their benefits, and nothing changed. And so that's why my initial technique, which was to invest in buy-to-let properties and house people on benefits with guarantees around it to protect my income and to protect the contracts and to protect the houses, has meant that my portfolio stayed full throughout the COVID period, and we didn't have to worry.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I think that there is definitely going to be a shift there. A lot of landlords moved out of looking after tenants on benefits or housing tenants on benefits because of the changes that the council made.
Absolutely.
To make it extremely difficult if people didn't pay their rent and so on. And they moved out of that marketplace. But I think now with universal credit increasing and the eligibility being widened so that other people can get involved, I think there is a move more to looking at how, we could house social tenants, not just benefits tenants, but other tenants who you mentioned earlier who need that bit of extra support, and people are clubbing together or collaborating with charities as well to do that. So we've talked a lot about your buy-to-let, Vicki. Do you do other strategies, or is that the core of your investing?
So for us, the bulk of our properties are buy-to-lets. But what we also did last year was another personal development. So buying our house, we bought with an elongated exchange. Took a keys undertaking. So a keys undertaking is a contract drawn up by the solicitors with the vendor of a property, who then gives you permission to have the keys between exchange and completion and allows you to do work on the property. So we bought a house that needed absolutely everything doing to it: rewire, replumb, new plaster, new kitchen, new bathroom, the lot, and did that between exchange and completion, so that when we moved into a done up house. And then the goal for this is to make the next stage of development on this property, which will not only increase the asset value of this. I won't remortgage to pull the money out, but it'll increase the asset value of this property, but it'll also have an income generating stream to it. Not only will I teach this to my mentees when I work with them, but also what we're looking at doing is creating an annex that can be used for Airbnb or for other people to rent.
That sounds a fantastic deal. Is that also in Liverpool?
No, that's here. That's our home.
Oh, right. Okay, brilliant. Well, just want to give a shout out to Charles, who said, Vicki, great advice there, quiet, insightful and authentic.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. And also, we've also Herman Stewart is watching and enjoying the interview. Vicki, have you thought of what you've just described? Is that also known as exchange with delayed completion, the keys undertaking?
Yes.
And you're also going into, well, service accommodation then, as it's now called, the Airbnb sort of side of things.
Yes.
Interesting. And have you thought about, because what it looks as though is that it's going to be a time where commercial property is going to be available at lower prices, is the thought going forward. Is that an area that you have sort of thought about?
Yeah, so I've got plans with my mentees at the moment to look at joint ventures on commercial to residential. So that's coming down the line as well, because yes, as you say, the market will shift. We're just going to work in different ways. I mean, look at us doing Zooms. I mean, I've spoken at property events that I would have driven around the country, stayed in a hotel overnight to speak live somewhere. And actually, it's been perfectly fine doing it on Zoom. Yeah, the energy is a bit different when you can't really see your audience and you can't say, so, hands up, how many people have got this many properties or whatever. Yeah. You can, if you've got longer, get people to put little hands up symbols so the energy is a little different, but you can still get the information across. And as an audience member, they can be sitting in their house. One guy was actually barbecuing, literally had a barbecue. He'd got us on the iPad. He's got his earphones in and he's cooking his food. And I can see him cooking his food, and people in their hammocks and their chairs out in the garden, listening to property events instead of going to some location. It's better for the hosts because they've not got all the expense. Some people are doing these property events for free. Some are still charging as an income stream, and it's better on the planet because I'm not driving around. So all of this will change, and all of this will mean that our relationships with properties will change. So how many people are going to now just drive somewhere for a meeting and stay in a hotel and then drive back again when they could have just do that on Zoom? In the old days, a couple of months ago, we would have wanted to see someone and shake hands with them. Yeah. And now if you do see them, you can't shake hands with them anyway. So you may as well stay on Zoom. So will we see hotels go down?
And I just want to call out Kelly, who's just saying, this is a fab interview. Thanks, ladies. Well, thanks, Vicki, sharing great advice. And also, we've got one of our former property game changers on the show, Quasi, saying that's a great tip. So I want to come on because actually time has whizzed by, Vicki, because I know that what you talk about is so, so important. And you've got your wealthy retirement plan that takes the ordinary person who's working and maybe hasn't focused and thought about their retirement. So do you want to tell us about that and why it's important, what it's about?
Okay, thank you very much. So it is the 5th book, and the point of the book is it's not about the word retirement, it's about control of your future. And there are 5 principles that I talk about in the book. So what is it that really matters to you? What's important to you? And I think through this period of lockdown, we will really have seen people have that moment, even if you've been busy at home, homeschooling and trying to work and do everything else, you still would have had time to think about what's important to you. And now with that new knowledge about what's important to you, what sort of life do you want to live? And when you work out what sort of life you want to live, it's very easy to then start to price it. So I want to work 4 days a week so that I can have a day off a week to be with my grandchildren. Great. And so that's really all I want. That's my priority, just to keep it simple. So I'm going to work 4 days a week. And in that 4 days a week, I've then got to earn enough money to keep me going for 7 days a week. So you can then work out all your expenses and then work out how much you need to earn an hour, or what job you need to have, or how many properties you need to have to generate the income. You can do that all mathematically on a spreadsheet. When you've got those 2 things, absolute clarity about how you want to live your life and a clear understanding of the money that you need to generate in order that you can have the life you want, then you can set about creating a financial plan so that you can generate that income. And the way that you do that is with the 3rd principle, recognizing the resources you've got. The 4th principle, leveraging the resources that you've got in order to generate the income that you need. And then finally, to start looking at your legacy. So what will all this mean? What is the bigger picture? What mark do you want to leave on the world? I mean, we're talking about property game changers. I think we can all be game changers in our own way. Sometimes the sentence game changer makes you feel like, ooh, I couldn't possibly be a game changer. It sounds, too threatening. But the simple idea that you can make better buying decisions, where you buy your coffee, where you buy your clothes, where and how you buy your food, all of those things can have an impact on the planet, on other people's lives, on other people's incomes. If you buy from people that are sustainable, good employers that take care of their staff, then your purchase is now helping all of the employees of that company. If you buy stuff that is locally produced, then things aren't having to be transported, so you're saving the environment. And that makes you a game changer, any of those decisions. As you start to invest in property, as you buy properties and you are a decent landlord, you are having an impact on people's lives. And that's what I wanted to do when I first started out. I'd been a single parent, as we said from that news article, and I wanted to be in a position where I could help other single parents. And so that's what I started out, finding single parents on benefits, giving them a decent home, because when you give them that foundation, then they can start to think about caring for their children. Then they can start thinking about getting jobs. Then they can start thinking about contributing to their community. And I really passionately believe that, we can all change the world by the small decisions that we start to take going forward now.
That's so beautiful. I love it in so many things. I'm sort of trying to say everything at once. But what I was thinking while you were talking is that's a huge inspiration, because you were, as the Daily Mail has said, some of the things that they do say are true. You were at one stage a struggling single mum on benefits, struggling financially anyway. And from there, you've gone and you've not just quietly got on with it, you have, even when it's been difficult to do so, shared that information with people, tried to bring other people with you who might not have thought that this was for them, who might look at that wealthy retirement thing and think that's not for me. But I agree with you that wherever we are right now, because I've only come into this world, you know, in the last few years, but it's phenomenal the amount of difference you can make, not just, as you said, in your own life, but in other people's lives, just by opening the door and finding out the information that you were sharing with people. So let's talk a little bit about, I know that you offer, you've got your books if people want the first step, but you've also got mentoring, and you will help people to get started. So tell us a bit about that, Vicki.
So all the way through, the business has morphed into, as I said to you, I source property. So for some clients who've got the money and not the time, then they will employ me to actually find them the investment deals. So that's the property sourcing side of the business. But then there are people who've maybe not got quite as much money or want to learn themselves, and they've got the time. So they come down the other side, and there's property mentoring there. And that goes through the whole gamut. You know, I used to be a university lecturer, so providing the training materials are there. So there's online courses, there's books, there's videos, there's all sorts of stuff that's there to support the mentees, but they work very closely with me. One of the things that I want is to actually make sure that any person who works with me, it's not about getting value for money, but they get the attention that they need. So I can draw on my skills as a master NLP practitioner to help them with the mindset. I can draw on my experience of really loving maths and understanding how money works to help them take control. So they've got the clarity, they can take control, we can identify the resources, they can leverage those, and then they can create the legacies they want. So everything that is the principles of the book, The Wealthy Retirement Plan, actually feeds through every part of my business. And then the last thing that sits at the top of it all is that there are online assessments. So already online at the moment is the Readiness to Retire Wealthy scorecard. So that follows the orange book and takes you through those 5 principles, gives you a personalized score and a personalized report so that you can get key action points. And that's free. You join my database, but if you don't want the emails, just politely unsubscribe. Don't spam me. Don't say that I was spam, because you got something for free. Just unsubscribe quite nicely, and that's fine. You've got a report. And then I am just finishing now the business health check. So if you are a business owner, then you can check the health of your business and again get a personalized score and key actions that you need to take. And I'm in the process of writing Invest Assess, which is for property investors to assess their property businesses and their portfolios, to look at where the weaknesses are, where the strengths are, so they've got something that they can then build on to move forward.
Wow, you've got so many resources there. It's an absolute goldmine, and I put up on the screen. Is this correct, Vicki?
Yes, that's correct. That's the website address. And if you go /scorecard, you'll get to the page where the scorecards are. You can sign up for the business health check and the Invest Assess, and we'll let you know when they're out. And you can take the Readiness to Retire Wealthy straight away.
So just for anybody not watching, who's listening, it's Vicki Wusche.com, VICKIWUSCHE.com, and we will have the links around and about here as well. So can
we have another hour? There's so much more.
There's so much that I do want to ask you, Vicki, but sadly we are coming up to the end of the time. And we've talked a little bit about how you help people. Are there any books or podcasts that you currently listen to that really inspire you, or maybe that got you started in the beginning, but in the beginning it was the training company?
Yeah, I've mentioned this. I was on a podcast just before you with some people in America, and it came up, The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. And I remember reading that book years ago, and what the book says, it's a story of a man trying to find his way, so he's on a mission. And not to spoil the end of the story, but basically the answer is that there are opportunities all around you, and You just need to recognize them when they're there, recognize the opportunity, and then act on the opportunity. And I love that book. It's like it's a mantra. You know, sometimes we put on a different pair of glasses and then we'll notice things about our health. And then we put on a different pair of glasses and we'll notice things about our family. And then we'll notice things about our business. So that's a fabulous book. And then I have a friend who's very much up there, sort of mystical end of the world, and he's got a podcast called The Zone Show. So that's Tom Evans and The Zone Show. So I love listening to that. I've been on so many amazing podcasts and met so many brilliant people. I would say another British podcast. Well, didn't you just have Tracy Cornelius from Glade on?
Yeah, she was just commenting. Yes.
Yeah. So I did a Facebook Live with her as well. So Tracy's lovely. So I just think that you've got to find your flavor. And I think what's most important out of this is to watch out for the sharks and the snakes and to not become one. I get Facebook. The one thing I really don't like about Facebook is that other people can say I liked their page when I don't even really know them, never mind wanting to like their page, or constantly, repeatedly invite me to join their group. When I've said no once, that should be enough. And I don't want to join the, I don't know, women's property millionaire, billionaire thing where they say that you could buy 10 houses in 10 weeks, because that's just not my style. And I think watch out for the people who are going to make money in the next 3 years by taking it from you. And when they take it from you, you lose the opportunity to invest it yourself. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't get mentors. That's not to say that you shouldn't buy books or take training courses. But when you do, know that you are going to get a return on your time and your money for taking part in that. And just be aware of the people that are, trying to tell you that you can get really rich really quickly, because they don't know what's coming down the line. None of us do. What we did before won't give us the same results as it might in the future if we do them again. You're not guaranteed. There's no guarantees now.
But there's never been any guarantees.
But we always thought that there were guarantees because we'd never had anything like a global pandemic with the world shut for 3 months. We've never experienced that before. And the last recession, and I did this at a couple of property talks, the last recession was caused by a shrinking of money. So when the neck is squeezed of the money, then money becomes more expensive, and that slows things down, and that brings in a whole recession. And you can understand it from an economic perspective. What we've got now is a recession that is going to be caused by mass unemployment. I mean, mass unemployment. So what we're actually looking at is the dangers of the sort of the 1920s depression, the post-World War I depression, while there is still money around, but with technology. So you can mitigate the unemployment by shifting things online, but that's about the speed of adaptation. So there's so many more ingredients in the mix that it might not be as deep a recession. It might just be, you asked whether it was a U or a V. It could be shallow and long. It could be shallow and short. It could be deep and short. It could be anything. Nobody knows. But anybody who is telling you that it's only going to last 2 years and everything will be fine is probably an estate agent, Rightmove, Savills. They're all saying it's fine because they need you to think it's fine, because that's how their businesses are going to keep going. So just think like a professional amateur. Focus on your cash flow and rethink due diligence and make your own decisions, because the opportunities are out there. You need to spot them, you need to analyze them, and you need to act on them for yourself.
Great, thank you, Vicki. And as we bring things to a close, what do you think, or how has it changed the game for you and your family? What difference has being an investor and being in business made to your life?
Well, as I was saying on the podcast earlier, should have been working today, and it wasn't wet earlier. It was quite nice, quite warm and sunny. So we spent 5 hours in the garden, and I've been planting up my vegetable plot. I never honestly would have said to you, if you had interviewed me a year ago, that I would have an allotment in the garden or any of this stuff. But I've got, 4-foot high stalks of sweet corn. I've got a greenhouse full of tomatoes. I'm actually growing cucumbers and melons, and I can do that because I don't have to worry, because one side of the business is my own portfolio, and that's moving along. The other side of my business is my mentees, and I just book calls in with them. So if I group them on one day, I can have another day off. And the other side of the business, I mean, just literally in the last 2 weeks, I've sourced a property for a client that's going to give them close to 15% net return on their investment. So they're going to be putting about 35 grand in the deal to pay for the deposit and the fees, and they're going to be getting out of it a nice healthy 15% return. It's a split property, and if either of the units is empty, it's still going to wash its face. So, we've mitigated all of the risks there. And I literally was on Facebook earlier speaking to one of my agents, and I've just accepted an offer on another property. So it's quite interesting that I'm busy. I'm busy working. I'm probably doing more now than I did through most of last year, but I do it when I want. Because I don't have to be anywhere, so I can control my diary, I can control my money, I can control my time, so I can focus on the things that are important to me. So gardening today, we're going to go fruit picking tomorrow, and then I can freeze my fruit along with my broccoli. Who knew that's what I would be doing? But I'm enjoying it, so that's the choices that I've made in the past. I never knew that they would give me this wonderful outcome, and to be so fortunate to be so comfortable and so happy and yeah, enjoying life.
Yeah, I love that, because it is really about having more control, but it's having more control so that you can live the life that you really want to live.
Totally.
Whether that means making jam and freezing broccoli, but planting up your allotment, whatever it means for you. And that's the freedom that getting control of these elements gives you. So thank you, Vicki, for sharing all that with us today. And is there any parting words that you want to say that you've not had chance in our conversation to mention?
I think just to everybody out there, I think I would reiterate that don't be a shark, don't be a snake. Be a game changer. Look at how you can make a difference. All these little differences are going to add up, and it can be the differences in the way that you behave in your personal life with your personal buying decisions, but also how you're going to behave in your business life with the way that you conduct and create your own property business, and how you help your tenants and your investors. And just be nice. Be nice. We've got a real opportunity to be nicer people now. Be nice.
So I just want to share a few comments that I've had coming in. So Ade saying great stuff. Sam Fongo from Midas Properties saying great share. And we've got Kelly Campbell saying brilliant, so inspirational. Thank you so much. And we've also got Ade saying thank you. So I want to join them all in saying thank you, Vicki, for joining us. Thank you for being the person that you have been, and also for sharing all of that knowledge so generously with us all. You've got so many scorecards, I couldn't even keep count. But you can, if you're watching or listening this and you think, I need to find out more about Vicki and what all that Vicki's got going on, vickiwusche.com. And I'm just going to end here by thanking you so much, Vicki, for being a property game changer. And thank you. Bye for now. See you soon.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.